Principal Officer William Hogarth stands accused of wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm Mick Johnson, an inmate at Fulchester Prison. Johnson has said that Hogarth beat him up after he caught him flushing narcotics down a workshop toilet, and a fellow prisoner, Victor Sneed, claims to have witnessed the assault. Yesterday, however, the accused man claimed that in fact it was Sneed who had beaten up Johnson, his prison fag, as part of a deliberate scheme to frame Hogarth. Currently in the witness box is the prison governor, Harold Price, called as a character witness.
Sterling, do you wish to re-examine?
I do, my lord, thank you. Governor, you say that the entire shift of 8 officers was moved to fresh duties. Now, why was that? Were they, in fact, suspected of violence towards the prisoners?
No, they were not. The fact is, I authorised the move largely at the request of the officers concerned.
Ah, so there was absolutely no suspicion of misconduct on the part of Mr. Hogarth?
None whatsoever.
Thank you, sir. Now, since my friend has referred to this inquiry, perhaps we could look at it in more detail.
My lord, it was an internal affair.
Well, I'm afraid that doesn't attach any privilege to it.
The incidents occurred in the autumn?
Yes.
Yes, and coincided with a move to cell block B of the man Victor Alfred Sneed?
Yes.
And that fact, was it noted by the inquiry?
Of course.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Governor. You may leave the court if
Thank you, my lord, but naturally I wish to stay.
Oh, very well, as you please.
My lord, Mrs. Hogarth is now available to give her evidence.
Very good.
I call Betty Ann Hogarth. And how long have you been married to the accused, Mrs. Hogarth?
16 years.
You have children?
Yes, a boy, Peter.
Yes. And how old is he?
He's 15 now.
Ah. Now, in discussing the case with you, did your husband say any more than is contained in his statement?
Well, I suppose so.
Well, will you please tell us what he said?
Well, he said it was a prisoner called Sneed who'd done it, who'd beaten up Johnson.
And did he say why Sneed should have done this?
He said it was all a put-up job, that Sneed wanted to fix him.
To frame him with the assault?
Yes.
Why?
Well, this Sneed's been after him, hasn't he, for months?
Pursuing a vendetta against your husband, in fact?
Yes, for months.
And your husband told you all this when?
Well, straight after it happened.
Before the committal proceeding?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Hogarth.
Oh, Mr. Carrington, would you mind standing up for a moment, please? With your lordship's permission. Now, Mrs. Hogarth, I'd like you to look at this man, if you would. Now, forgive me for asking this, but have you at any time had a love affair with this man, Principal Officer Carrington?
I beg your pardon?
I said, have you had a love affair with this man?
No, certainly not.
Not even a passing flirtation at a staff social early last summer?
No. I don't know what rubbish he's been telling you, but it's not true. If I'd have thought he was going to say that, I'd...
Yes? But you did consort with Mr. Carrington on that occasion?
Consort? All we did was talk.
What about?
About the famous lock-in of theirs, that's all.
Ah, about the officer's work to rule. Yes. Yes, I see. Thank you, Mrs. Hogarth. Oh, and thank you, Mr. Carrington. Nevertheless, does not your husband frequently accuse you of unfaithfulness?
Well, once or twice, maybe.
Once or twice? Oh, come, madam, there's no need to be coy with us. And it is significant, surely, that you were not in court. Didn't you want to hear your husband's trial? The fact is it not, that your marriage is in a thoroughly bad way?
Bad? Well, if it is bad, it's not my fault. Oh, he'll say I've been unfaithful, all right. He's as jealous as a cat. But you want to ask him about the other side.
I'm asking you, madam.
Well, for one thing, he's never at home, is he?
Oh, you mean your husband is the one who's unfaithful?
Who, him? No, I mean he's at the blessed prison all the time. All day, all night, all weekends. Overtime, double overtime. He's supposed to do a 40-hour week, isn't he? It's nearer 70 by the time he's finished. I never see him. Never any help with the boy.
Never any help with your boy?
No. And where does it get him? Principal officer after 25 years. And now all this.
You have, in fact, left him on a couple of occasions, I believe.
Well, not permanent, mind.
The second time occurring in December, not long after he was charged with this assault.
Yes. Well, that was...
Yes, madam.
That was the strain, sir.
The strain. The strain of your having to live with a man who feels that he has failed. Failed both in his marriage and in his work.
Well, I suppose.
Thank you, Mrs. Hogarth.
Golding, you wish to re-examine?
Yes, I do, my lord. Mrs. Hogarth, I'm sure we can see how, with the tensions of your married life, you may concur with counsel's suggestion of failure. But has your husband ever said anything to make you think that he was failing in his standards as a prison officer?
Standards?
Or said anything to indicate that his frustrations might have driven him to, for instance, to abusing the prisoner?
Oh, no. No, never. That's partly his trouble, if you ask me. He's too correct, too set in his ways. Always does everything strictly by the book.
By the book, according to the tradition of the prison service.
Yes, he's traditional to the core.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Hogarth.
Anyway, he hasn't got the guts. He's too much of a coward.
Yes, well, thank you. No further questions, my lord.
Coward, madam?
That's right.
Well, we've heard your husband described as a number of things. A hard-case screw and so on, but hardly a coward.
Well, he is.
Leave it, girl, leave
No, Bill.
Mr. Hogarth, be silent. Now, do you understand?
Yes, I'm very sorry, my lord. I spoke without thinking.
Very well. Well, Mrs. Hogarth, leave what? What was it that your husband wanted you to leave?
Well, it's why I left him the first time, back last October. Because he was afraid.
Afraid of what?
The bully boys.
Last October. That was just after the drug smuggling episode, was it not?
And that's right. And that's why they did him over. Beat him up.
Who?
A couple of Sneed's bully boys. They caught Bill as he was coming out of the Queen's Arms. That's a local pub. One Saturday night and gave him a wicked beating.
Were you present?
No, but he managed to get himself home and then he told me.
I see. What makes you say, Mrs. Hogarth, that the assailants were Sneed's bully boys?
They said they were giving him a taste of what he could expect if he went after the drugs barons anymore.
The drugs barons?
Oh, yes, sir. The prisoners who run the drugs rackets inside.
I see. Well, for the benefit of the jury, I should like to make one thing quite clear. Your husband did not actually say that they named Sneed as the instigator of the assault.
No, but...
No. Now then, you say it was because of the assault that you first left home.
No, sir. It was because of the way he took it. He got snappy, started taking it out on us. He wouldn't go to the police nor the governor. He even lied to the doctor about how he got hurt. You know, all the bruises.
I see.
Anyway, we had a right set to over it. I threatened to go to the police and he threatened to beat me out the house if I did. Of course, if he was going to take that attitude.
So you left him?
Yes.
And then again this second time?
Well, it was over the same trouble, really. He said that Sneed or someone was trying to frame him. So I said, well, now he'd have to tell them about the first attack, but no, he still said no.
Thank you, madam. Now, Mr. Lotterby, do you want to ask some further questions?
Yes, my lord. Did he say why? Why he felt the first attack should still be concealed?
Yes.
Well, Well, Mrs. Hogarth?
Well,
Please tell us, madam.
well, Bill thought it could look bad for him, you see. He said
Yes?
it might look as though he were biding his time, waiting for a chance to get even in his own way.
A chance to get even with Sneed?
Yes.
How?
Well, by trying to frame Sneed with beating up Johnson.
Trying to frame Sneed with beating up Johnson?
Yes.
So your husband wanted to frame Sneed?
Yes. Oh, no. No.
No, what?
No, I mean, he said it would look like that if he...
If he what, madam?
Well, if he... Oh, heavens, well, if he let on now about keeping quiet about the first attack outside the pub.
Ah, or so he told you?
Yes.
And you disagreed?
Yes, I did.
Disagreed to such an extent that you had a bitter row and left him.
Yes.
And now you've had your way.
Sir?
It's all come out. The truth.
Yes. Well, I know it sounds a bit, well, you know, a bit off. I mean, leaving him at a time like that, but...
Yes.
Well, I thought perhaps maybe if I went off, if I left him, it would, well, you know, jolt him up, get him going again, get him fighting back. Like he used to be.
I see.
Get him fighting back. Thank you, Mrs. Hogarth. You've been most frank with us.
My lord, I have no further questions for this witness, but in the light of this fresh evidence, I would like to recall the accused.
Certainly, Mr. Golding, we must hear more from your client. Thank you, madam. You may leave the witness box, and you may sit over there if you wish.
Yet you refrained from taking any action, refrained from reporting this assault to the police or the governor.
A fat lot of good it would have done.
What's that?
It wouldn't have helped her.
Oh, why not?
Only made more trouble.
For whom? Yourself?
He doesn't care, does he? All he cares about is precious reforms. He doesn't want to risk stirring things up.
You're referring to Mr. Price, the prison governor.
Who else? Discipline, he doesn't know the meaning of the word.
You're saying you lack confidence in him.
In him, in his assistant governors. Well, look, you put a prisoner on report for misbehaviour, insubordination, and what happens? Nothing. Report ignored. You work your life away, night, blooming day. Well, where's your promotion? They don't want to know, do they? Annual interview, what did he say? Have you ever considered training up as a dog handler, Bill, old lad? Me, 25 years in the service and a bloody dog handler. I'm sorry, my lord, I was forgetting where I was.
Very well. I can see that it might be upsetting, Hogarth.
Yes.
So, because of this lack of confidence, you kept silent about this assault outside the prison.
Yeah. She's right, of course, Betty. When I was younger, it would have been different. I'd have fought back then, all right, no trouble. But why? It's because the job was different. The people. A rock. That's what a governor should be. That's what they always used to be. Men you knew for certain would back you up, respect you, take your word against the word of a prisoner. But not anymore, not this lot.
So you let it go. You took the beating and said nothing.
Yeah. Just like they know I would. The drug barons. They know who runs the stir these days.
And then when this incident occurred with Johnson and you were accused of the assault, you still kept silent. Now why?
Like Betty said, I could see it wouldn't help.
But surely, Hogarth.
My lord, I'm a prison officer. It was my duty to report that attack outside a pub, no matter what I think of Price and his lot. It was still my duty. I failed, didn't I? I failed in my duty. Me. I failed.
And because of that, you were afraid that people might think you could have failed again. Might think that you'd abused the prison service code and attacked a prisoner.
I suppose so, yeah.
Yes. Failure through fear. Well, it's a very long step from that to violence through vindictiveness. Thank you, Mr. Hogarth.
So, Mr. Hogarth, I was right about your feeling isolated. At odds with your colleagues, hated by the prisoners, beaten up outside the local, rowing with your wife who despised you as a coward. You felt increasingly alone and rejected, didn't you, Mr. Hogarth?
Maybe.
Maybe, but you were. You've just admitted it. So you devised this scheme to exorcise your demon, to fix Sneed once and for all.
Oh, look, how could I?
You'd already fixed him on one occasion. Maximum loss of remission and moved category B. All you had to do was nail him a second time. Get him convicted on a second serious charge, such as assaulting a fellow prisoner. Then he'd really be for the high jump, as you put it. He'd get an additional sentence and move to a segregation unit.
So you say.
But as Fulchester has no segregation unit, he'd be transferred to a dispersal unit, wouldn't he? So you'd be rid of him once and for all, wouldn't you? You'd have won.
You reckon, eh? You think you'll be that easy?
Why not?
You just don't know, do you? You don't begin to know.
Oh, what else, then?
It's your family, that's what.
You're not now telling us that your family was threatened with your wife and your boy?
Yeah, my boy.
Oh, tell us. Do tell us, Mr. Hogarth.
I didn't want her to know. She'd have gone off the deep end, got the police.
So now you were saying they threatened violence against your son?
Ah, no, not violence. They're more crafty than that.
Oh, what then?
You already had trouble at school, hadn't he, young Peter?
Trouble?
Yeah, a fuss over some pet pills. But the next time he's out, finished. You don't think that was genuine, do you? I mean, not Peter. He's not that sort of kid, never.
Well, so you would like to believe.
He's not, I tell you. They set him up for it. Just to show me how easy it was to... The bastard.
Now, let me get this straight. You're seriously suggesting that because your boy, who, by your wife's account, you've been neglecting, because your boy got into trouble at school over some pet pills, this must have been a frame-up to force you to lay off the drugs barons?
Yeah. And they bloody succeeded, too. Do you think I'm going to risk that boy's future? Risk it against a job that... don't make sense anymore. It's a farce. Sell out. Prison service. Just a sick joke these days.
Thank you, officer.
Golding?
No further questions, my lord.
Thank you, Mr. Hogarth. You may return to the dock, please.
Lord.
That concludes the case for the defence, my lord.
Well, Mr. Lotterby?
My lord. Members of the jury, a sick joke. Well, I fear that all too accurately sums up the attitude of the accused, both to his work and to those in his custody. Now, Hogarth, he knew about Johnson's betrayal of the hooch brewing operation. He knew he could thus make it look as though Sneed was exacting vengeance on Johnson. So he deliberately set out to frame Sneed. He waited his chance, and then he struck, beating unconscious that defenseless little man Johnson, at a time when he knew he could saddle Sneed with responsibility for it. But unfortunately for him, his plan went awry. Sneed had seen him enter the washroom, saw the actual assault. But instead of rushing in to help the prisoner, he had the presence of mind to call Principal Officer Carrington to the scene. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard the evidence of that officer, and of Sneed, and, above all, of the victim himself. And you have heard the words of the accused, which I submit most clearly confirm his guilt of this ruthless assault.
Thank you. Mr. Golding?
Mr. Hogarth works in an obsolete county prison, crammed to excess with a ragtag mixture of offenders, many of whom are tough old recidivists, every bit of as impervious to change. No one is disputing that Mr. Hogarth is a traditionalist, and central to the prison service code of conduct is the rule of non-violence. For this man to have committed this cold-blooded assault in the manner and for the motives which have been suggested would have been as alien to him as, well, as a doctor killing his patient. Yes, there was a vendetta between these two men, Hogarth and Sneed, but the victim of it is this one man who has suffered from it all along. Quis custodit ipsos custodes, members of the jury. Who is to guard the guards themselves? Now, you are being asked today to take the word of this officer against the word of two unscrupulous criminals in whose interest it is to try and destroy him. Can you do otherwise than acquit him of this monstrous charge?
Thank you, Mr. Golding. Now, members of the jury, before reaching your verdict, I urge you to consider the main items of evidence that have been presented before you, and they are these. The prisoner Johnson was the victim of a most vicious assault which he told you was inflicted on him by the accused. Now, you must consider whether he, in relating this and his other story of angel dust drugs, exhibited any degree of uncertainty. Then you heard Principal Officer Carrington. He stated that he found the accused in the washroom standing over an unconscious man and how it looked as though the accused had been interrupted in the act of kicking him. After this, the prisoner Sneed, a man with a long string of convictions, including fraud, who claims to have witnessed the actual assault. But this, in turn, has been strongly challenged by the accused, who says that he, the accused, was innocent and that, on the contrary, it was Sneed who committed the assault. Now, prosecuting counsel suggested at one stage that the attack by the accused was part of a calculated plan to frame Sneed. But, as a result of evidence that arose later on in the trial, counsel canvassed the possibility that under the increasing and upsetting pressures of the accused man's life, he may have reached a stage of mental frustration which could have led to a quite unpremeditated act of violence. Well, however that may be, if you think the accused made this vicious attack, then it is your duty to return a verdict of guilty. But, members of the jury, essentially, you are faced with a choice between the words of the two men, Sneed and Johnson, as against the word of the accused, Hogarth. A choice, members of the jury. And you should remember that the onus is on the prosecution to prove guilt, so that if you think there is any reasonable doubt in the accused's guilt, then you must acquit. And now, members of the jury, I will ask you to retire to consider your verdict.
All stand. Members of the jury, will your foreman please stand? Just answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached a verdict upon which you are all agreed?
Yes.
Do you find the prisoner William Peter Hogarth guilty or not guilty of the charge of wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm?
Not guilty.
Thank you, members of the jury. Now, I feel it is my duty, before dismissing this case, to recommend that the evidence recorded at this trial should be made available to the Director of Public Prosecutions. The man responsible for this vicious assault is still at large, and it is to be hoped that further inquiries will result in his being brought to justice. Case dismissed.
Court will rise.
Next week, you can join another jury when our cameras return to watch a leading case in the Crown Court.